All right. Welcome, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Great. Good.
All right, good. Well, I am speaking to you remotely from Atlanta, Georgia, actually in my basement, which sounds a little bit like Wayne's World, but it's not. Let me tell you first who I am, Andy Lippman. I am the chair of this wonderful committee, the Leadership Council for Fundraising. Let me introduce everybody before we start. First of all, I've got some panelists up there before we begin. Many of you are going to hear Drew Strudy, who is up there doing an amazing job and looking very fashionable. Then we have Marianne and Nate Martin. If you two want to just raise your hand. They are not related. No, I'm just kidding. Then we also have Randy Ball here today. Thanks, Randy. Thanks all of you for coming today. I want to let everyone know these guys, plus the rest of our group, which I'm about to announce who they are as well, have done an amazing job becoming the voice of this and to help us make a difference for fundraising and for learning a lot more about corporate relations, as we will speak about today. We also have in our group Keith Majors from the New Jersey chapter, Joel Neerman from the Greater Illinois chapter. We've got Walter Witt from the Metro DC chapter and Howard Tribble from the Nevada chapter. I think I forgot to mention that Randy is from the Nevada chapter. We've got Marianne and Nate are from the Western Pennsylvania chapter, and Drew is from the Great Iowa chapter. So just want to let you all know that. I am from the Georgia chapter of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I guess what our goal today is to share some examples of success that we have had in corporate engagement and making an impact in the CF Foundation, and kind of get everybody in the room talking about this topic and how we can do a better job, or for those of you who are doing a really great job already, how we can all learn from that job and take it forward. I will be participating as well in the panel discussion, though of course I will be here because, as many of you know, I have cystic fibrosis. And by the way, thanks to all of you, I am actually 44 years old with cystic fibrosis. So we are making great strides. I appreciate it. So like I said, I will be participating in the panel today. Drew is going to kind of be the moderator with the volunteer panel. And I'm excited to hear from everybody's experiences. And I hope not only to tell you some of the things that I've learned and my goings on, but also to learn something from this today, and that we all learn something and pick up some things that we can use in the future to help raise more awareness and funds for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Drew.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. My name is Drew Strudy. I am a father of a 3.5-year-old son, Major. We do live in Iowa. I was announced the other day as the National Advocacy co-chairs with my wife and Chad Reedy, who is also a cystic fibrosis, an individual living with CF. So very excited to take that on, thank you. But really want to get involved here. Obviously, I think everyone in the room is doing some sort of fundraising at some level, whether that be on the national level or with their own things. And so what we want to make sure that we're doing here is discussing those things and getting some really good open dialogue. So we're going to start off with kind of an interactive panel around engaging CEOs, employees, and colleagues, but as well as vendor and client networking. But we will open it up. We're going to try and leave as much time as possible for Q&A at the end there to share your successes, your challenges, and answer any questions that you have, whether it be about what they're doing or any advice that they can provide on the things that you're doing yourselves. So with that, I want to introduce everyone real quickly. We're going to start off here with Andy Lippman up there on the screen. Is he still over there? Can they see him? Excellent. Everyone knows Andy. Andy is the man in this world. He is a proud father and husband, and that is before he is a person living with cystic fibrosis. He's a great guy. His sister Wendy passed away from CF shortly after her birth, and he actually did not know her. But since learning more about his own disease and learning about his sister Wendy, he has gone on to start the Wish for Wendy softball tournament. Has been going for 18 years now, and during time frame has raised over $3.7 million from this one event. Andy is the proud recipient of the 2016 Alex Award at VLC. That is a huge honor, and he is known as being fearless when going into corporate engagement and asking for money and asking for them to participate and help out. Next up, we've got Randy Ball on the end. Randy is out of the Heart of America chapter in Kansas. He is a father of 2 wonderful kids. He's got his son Braden, who has cystic fibrosis. Living in Wichita, he does work in the aerospace industry, and he has been responsible for helping put on the 2-day event, the big Bill Self Golf Classic. It is in its 14th year. It is an 18-year best ball tournament, and since inception has raised almost $1 million, with most of that coming directly from corporate engagement. And a huge Steelers fan. That's right. Now, last but definitely not least, Marianne and Nate Martin out of the Western Pennsylvania chapter, Pittsburgh, also Steelers fans. Proud parents of 3 wonderful children. Their daughter Sophia is living with cystic fibrosis and is known as just one of the other great warriors that we have here. Passionate about engaging their community with cystic fibrosis. Nate works in the construction industry, and with the help of his employer, puts on a guest bartender night every year. Mascaro Construction, along with the leadership and the CEO, 10 bar for their employees, subcontractors, vendors, and clients. They pick up the tab for the whole thing, and all of the tips go to the CF Foundation. Over the last 10 years, the event has raised over $80,000, and they are just a wonderful, wonderful example of engaging corporate leadership. With that, we are just going to dive right into it, if everyone's okay with that. So where I think we wanted to start off with is, let's start at the beginning. As you guys are looking at putting on these events, and you're thinking about, I need to get corporations involved. Where did you start? What was the thing that you did starting from the beginning as far as identifying who it is that you wanted to reach out to, and then how did you do so? I'm going to actually present this to Andy to start, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Drew. First of all, thank you for not mentioning that I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan. The last year and a half have been very difficult for me, but I'm going to therapy. So let's go from there. And let me tell you a little bit what I do when I look for corporations. For those of you, I'm sure many of you are familiar with LinkedIn, the social network. I go to LinkedIn and I kind of look up a lot of my close friends and kind of see, many people change jobs here and there, and I kind of see what companies they're working with. And if I see a company that's locally based and that I know a little bit about, I'll also do some research on that company. And if it's a relatively big company, I will talk to my friend and see if we can, go talk to the CEO. Now, an even bigger benefit is if my friend is actually the CEO. That makes a big difference too. I can go straight up to him or her and ask if that's a possibility, if they would be interested, what kind of charities that they already work with. Another thing is I look for new companies that have just moved into the Atlanta or the Georgia area, into the local area, and then I kind of do some research on them and see if there's maybe a tie there. And then lastly, what I do is I will look at maybe a similarity that I have with that company. For example, and this is something that I'm going to be moving forward with this year, a new company I'm going to look at. Many of you are familiar with Smoothie King. Well, Smoothie King was founded in 1973, and when it was founded, it wasn't supposed to last that long, but here it is still around 2018. Well, I happen to be born in 1973. I wasn't supposed to last that long, and here it is, 2018. So that's something I'm going to approach them with. I actually took a picture under their sign that says, with a passion or something like that since 1973, or with purpose since 1973, and I'm going to send them that with my proposal of trying to get them to sponsor the event. So, there are ways to be creative, but the biggest thing is I look for my close contacts and I see if there's a possibility there, and that's kind of how I reach out. But there are different levels into how I do it, but that's kind of the approach I've always taken.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. I'm going to go to Randy next. I know you have a large amount of corporate engagement. Tell me how you kind of go out and identify who it is you're looking to engage.
Yeah, so for us, the first thing that I did was I found an event I was passionate about. That certainly helped me understand exactly how I wanted to engage the corporate community was first with my passion. The second thing I would say that I did was, and for me it was a golf event, in the business world that's generally a pretty easy way to at least get an introduction, but I started with who do I know? And I could almost mimic what Andy just said, is I just went through everybody that I knew, regardless of what company they worked at, regardless of what position they had in that company, it didn't matter. So the fact that you don't know the CEO or you don't know the decision maker really didn't matter to me. I needed an in, because I knew that once I had an in, somebody that would at least listen to me, my passion would come through. And all of you in this room have a reason you're in this room. Mine now is my 19-year-old son, so I took a picture of him with me, and before I went into every meeting, I remembered why I was going in there. And all I did was ask my friends, can you introduce me to, can I have lunch with, can I take to dinner, how can I meet the decision maker at your company? And sometimes it takes more than one. You got to go through gates, right? I mean, Andy, when you know the CEO, that's great, but when you don't, and you know maybe somebody who works in HR, or you know somebody on the floor who has to introduce you to somebody in HR, who then has to introduce you to somebody who is the decision maker, it takes patience, but your passion will show through. So I started with who do I know, made a list of every close connection I had and where did they work, and then decided that, you know, those corporate dollars, every company, whether they like it or not, has a community responsibility, and most of them like it, and they want to get involved. And then I just coupled that with our story, because our story sells. All right, the success of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is absolutely what has got me in the door, and then being at the event and hearing the progress we've made has kept them coming back for 14 years.
That's awesome. And I'll have you touch on that here in a little bit some more on the follow-up, but I do want to ask Nate and Marianne here. Nate, you guys have a little bit different situation because this is your employer. Tell us a little bit how did they approach you or did you approach them? And if so, kind of what was that starting process?
Well, so Randy talked about the story. You know, the story is what gets people engaged. Like Drew said, our situation is a little different. They were part of our story. So when my wife was... When our daughter was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis in utero with my wife, there was one day we were just standing on the trailer steps, and the now president and CEO of the company said, "Hey, what's wrong?" So I just kind of told him, you know, what was going on. It was, you know, news that we're going to have a daughter and she's going to have cystic fibrosis, and they kind of said right there on the steps of the trailer that, "Hey, we're in the fight with you." So when I go tell people our story or I talk about our story, you know, they're integral in that part of the story. And, you know, it was kind of an organic thing. I think a common thread you're going to hear today is relationships. You know, I had already had a pretty strong relationship with the now president and CEO from past projects that we worked together on. So, you know, that strong relationship kind of just dovetailed into their involvement in cystic fibrosis and supporting our family. So
awesome. Now, Marianne, obviously you're probably the more organized half of this duo here. I'm going to go on a limb. If you're anything like my wife and me, how is it that you get involved with this event and help expand it from where it started?
Well, they're a very family-oriented company, so they always want the family to come. They want them to be involved. They want walkers to come. They want their family. You know, it's very inclusive. And I think just being a part of that, I know this last bartending event, we brought our daughter, who is 10, and she... Yeah, well, she didn't have anything to do.
She makes a heck of a Bloody Mary.
But she did call, you know, silent auction items. She, you know, did call just 50-50 or, well, no, I don't, well. But anyway, she made announcements, and she really helped, I think, just kind of put a face to the event. So I think that really helped, just having the family there.
That's awesome. So I think, and to summarize a lot of what all of you are saying is you've really leveraged the people that are closest to you, whether they be people you already know or people that you at least had some sort of a relationship with to start with. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, just to touch on it, we've been doing it for 14 years, but it started off with about 5 or 6 people. That's really all I had. I didn't have this huge network of people that I have today. I had 4, 5, 6 guys that I could go to and say, I need, and they said, okay, it's for your son, we'll do it. And then over time, obviously, that network grows, right? It's who they know, it's who they introduce you to, and so on and so forth. But it absolutely started with a small group of people that were willing to just jump on board and go with us for a year or 2.
Awesome. So let's maybe move forward in the process. You've already identified who you want to talk with. Maybe you've got a meeting with them. Andy, I'm going to start with you again. What are you saying in that meeting? I mean, how are you actually making that ask of what it is that you want?
Well, like a few of the others have said, I do talk a lot about my story. When I first started, I created a proposal and I brought it out there. But what I started noticing was the proposal was just very dry. It was very business-like, and I didn't think this was a business decision as much as this was a decision from the heart. And so I kind of told my story and that growing up with the disease that I wasn't supposed to live very long. And here I was, but I wasn't satisfied because the amount of treatments that were available to me were sparse, to say a few. I mean, we had Pulmozyme and we had just a few others, but there wasn't much out there. And I guess my point to them was, I would really love your help, not just to help me, but 30,000 others in this country who deal with this disease every day. And then I talked about how I had a sister before I was born, Wendy, who we do the charity event in memory of. And I talk about how she and I were the only 2 members of our family with cystic fibrosis. And my one wish for Wendy, the name of the event, was that we could cure cystic fibrosis and that I would be alive to see it so that I could tell her one day that when I was on this earth, we cured CF. And so that's kind of how I bring it to people. Is I don't tell the story as, hey, you guys need a charity, you need this, you need that. I kind of tell them from my perspective first and say I would love to work with you. And I also would share like all the people that we work with and some of the sponsors that we already have relationships with in case they have a relationship with that sponsor, with that company. And that's been very effective. And but the biggest thing is just telling the story and being sincere and being okay with asking, putting an ask out there. And if it doesn't work out, the worst they can say is my mom, who I just found out through seeing a text on my phone, is in the audience. My mom always told me the worst thing you can hear is no. And unfortunately, growing up, when I got a lot of no's from her, it was the worst thing possible, but that's okay. but back then, looking for corporate sponsorships and such, the worst thing is no. And you know what? It's not so bad. It's not so bad because if you get a yes, one yes beats about 100 no's.
Absolutely. Yep. And I'm going to go over to you, Randy. I know you have a very unique situation. I think you probably do something that a lot of people forget, and that's after the event. Tell us a little bit about how you continue to maintain that relationship with the people that have gotten involved.
Yeah, it's really important to me that my sponsors know and understand that this is personal, that there is a lot in it for them, but there's at least twice every year outside of before I go back and ask again, I'm touching that sponsor some way, somehow, either with a phone call or with an email, and it always happens right after this event, so you're taking the first step right here. But I take the science back to them, and I tell them, this is where we're spending your money, and this is what your money's doing. So it's really important for me to, my event's in May, so in June, July, to give them the results. Here's exactly what we did. Here's where the money is going to go. And then before the holidays, I try to reach out to all of them as well and say, hey, just wanted to, touch base with you, let you know I was thinking about you guys. Thank you for all you're doing for us. It'll be, 3 or 4 months before we get back again, but I just constantly culture that relationship so that when I do go back for an ask, it's easier to ask for more. It's not the last time I heard from you wasn't the last time you were asking me for money. And you're telling me what my money's doing. I mean, we have a fantastic story. We have great use of the dollars that come in. And as we get that data from the foundation with the 92 cents out of every dollar, how frugal our organization is, the advances in the science, that's exactly what the corporate world wants to know. They want to know that their money's making a difference and you're good stewards of it. So I try to touch them twice a year to let them know about it.
That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. And I know you've said this in the past a little bit about, one of the things that you mentioned to them is we're winning and everyone wants to be on a winning team.
Yeah, that's always my message, is everybody wants to be on a winning team. When anybody asks me why CF? Why wouldn't I do American Heart Association? Great. Why wouldn't I do cancer? Why wouldn't I do, Susan G. Komen? You can. The difference is we're here for a cure and we're winning. We're going to do it. Not that they're not, but the proof's in the pudding, right? The results are here for us. We got medications that are impacting a genetic defect you can take a pill for. So it's telling the story and saying, everybody wants to be a part of a winning team. And you can be a part of that cure that Andy was talking about.
That's awesome. Nate, did you have something to add to that?
If I could add something to that, it's along those lines. He talked about that middle of the year, maybe whatever, in between events, communication. The bartender event that we do, it's more of a networking thing, and it kind of lends itself to when Great Strides comes around, sending those letters out, to the people that come to the bartending event every year and support us at that event. It just makes it easier to send those letters to those people and have those communications.
Awesome. I'm going to stick with you guys here. I'm going to change things just a little bit. Since you guys really are a very, it's all within house, kind of within your company. As you were looking to grow this, what would you maybe say as some recommendations on how to engage your coworkers and their families and the people that are around you? Obviously, I think there's a lot of people, myself included, that work in a large company with a lot of different people, a lot of different departments. How have you gone about trying to get the company to support you in engaging all of those people that surround you?
They incentivize by matching. So like pretty much everything we do, they're a site sponsor as well for a Great Strides Walk. On top of their donation for the site sponsor, they actually they match $100 for every walker from the company that comes. So they kind of incentivize the employees to get involved based on, here, you guys are getting involved. There's no monetary impact to you guys, and we're going to donate this extra money. They run a personal gift match they do the same thing with. So kind of incentivize by saying, hey, we're going to match your dollars, which I think is what really kind of helps everybody that is outside that get involved. And the other thing is the culture of the company is, like Marianne talked about, it's, one of our core values is provide a family atmosphere. So it kind of just lends, right now we're a medium-sized company, so pretty much everybody knows everybody, so it makes it a little easier.
So now I know that you invite a lot of vendors, a lot of your clients. A lot of times that can be hairy when you're trying to solicit people that you do business with for money. Tell us how you've maybe gone about that.
Yes and no. The construction industry, at least in the Pittsburgh market, obviously business is business, but it's a pretty close-knit group of contractors. A lot of repeat business with our subcontractors, a lot of repeat business with our vendors. A lot of the local clients are very, they're very loyal to the contractors in the market. So it's a group of people that are used to working together all the time. So it's not really, I don't know how to say this, we're not really mixing business with, it's more that they support us on the business end. Everybody's usually always willing to support each other, in their endeavors. It's kind of a reciprocal thing. We do a lot of supporting of their charities, just like they support our charities. So it's kind of a community.
Awesome. Community. That's great. Now, Randy, you also work for a pretty large company, Aerospace. Tell us a little bit how maybe you've gotten your company and the other industry involved.
Yeah, well, if you spend an hour with me, you're going to hear about CF. So it just comes up all the time. So all my employees, everybody who works for me knows and understands, you know, who my son is and what we do. Generally, it's just awareness. In a lot of cases, they've never heard of CF, and so they'll go home and look it up. In some cases, they may know somebody that has it. I would say half my committee, and my committee is about 14 people now, half of my committee are people that I either work with today or have worked with in the past that have joined me just through the conversations. I do get them to volunteer the day of, so they get exposed to it, and then they kind of go on their own. I've had employees who I've just had conversations with about my son and about the cause, who then have started bake sales internally at the company. They have come up and said, hey, can we do a picnic and cook hamburgers and hot dogs? Maybe the company can buy the hamburgers and hot dogs and we'll sell them for $5 and all the proceeds can go to CF. So really it's just constant communication with them and letting them know what I'm doing and why I do it internally. And then we do the same thing. Again, I have a vendor in-house and we're talking about spending money with them. Inevitably, the subject to CF is going to come up. And I'll talk about the golf tournament. And that's, you know, that's an advantage I have with the golf tournament. A, I'm passionate about it. B, everybody that I deal with in the business world, somebody there plays golf. So it's generally not a hard ask. But there again, a lot of people like to go have a drink after work. So that's a good avenue there. The softball tournament. It's a good physical activity, and there's a lot more people that do it than you think. I think the biggest thing is constant communication with those people that you run into.
Awesome. Now, Andy, I'm going to go to you here. You do a lot of bigger corporations. When you go in to make your presentations, do you have an actual presentation with you, along with kind of an idea of how much you're going to ask them for, or is it really I'm going to go in and tell my story and just ask them how much they're willing to give?
What I do is first of all, I will bring the corporate sponsorship sheet, which shows all the sponsorship levels. I'll have an idea of what they could probably spend or what they can't spend or all that kind of thing. So I might mention a couple of the levels that I think they'll fit into, but I won't say you should do this or you should do that. I just kind of mention them. But what else I do when I do go in to meet with businesses is I bring a book. So I've written books, so I will bring one in with me and just give it to them, and I'll sign it, and I'll bring a few extras to assign to a few of their employees or whoever they want to give them to. And from there, I just say, you know, this is kind of, this is my story. I don't want to talk too long while I'm here because I want to listen more than I want to talk. I want to kind of hear it from your point of view, what kind of interests you have. But for the most part, I just share, again, I share my story, but I bring a book. And I bring a corporate sponsorship letter, and after that, just say, you know, we would love the opportunity to work with you. And after the fact, you know, we try to follow up and I think what was mentioned was the science, telling people about the science. We do that as well. I try to personalize each sponsorship letter. I don't just send a generic sponsorship page. Hey, you know, do this, do that. I send one out saying, hey, remember when we did this, or remember when your company was a part of this? I think this would be a great opportunity, and here's why. So I try to make it specific to the company so that they really understand that I'm not just throwing out, just throwing letters out here and there and cold calling everybody, that I really do my research and I know who I'm talking to, and I really do feel that the relationship would be valuable, not just for us with being a volunteer at the CF Foundation, but for them looking for a charity to be a part of, especially as great a review as the CF Foundation gets. And I do bring a lot of information about when the CF Foundation was in Forbes and what percentage goes to the charity versus what percentage goes to administrative costs, and just explain how that looks compared to a lot of organizations, and just that your money is not going to be wasted. It is going to go to the best possible, in my opinion, the best possible foundation in the country, and they're going to take that money and give it to places where they're going to help us find a cure for this disease. And therefore, that's why I'm so passionate about it. And then I also share what's going on as far as what kind of treatments are now out there compared to years past. And I'll also show them one other thing. I'll show them the life expectancy. I'll show them when I was growing up, the life expectancy was in the teens, and now, or the median life expectancy, and now it's 47 years old. And to show them that versus where it is today, and to tell them my age then and my age now and what a difference that makes, I think that's the one that really, really stands out to make them open their eyes and see what opportunity they have And I'm sorry, one final thing I will add, I do mention to them is we tell people all the time with cystic fibrosis that if you're going to have a disease, this is the one to have. And I say that because we are the next disease to be cured. I always tell them that. I go, I truly believe that we are the next disease. And like Randy was saying about being on the winning team, that's kind of my way of saying you're on the winning team because you're involved with the disease that's about to stand, instead of for cystic fibrosis, the CF is going to stand for cure found. So there you go.
That's awesome. So I think we've probably got one time for everyone to answer one more question here. But before I get to that last question, I'm going to ask Marianne one more. So obviously these guys have talked a lot about follow-up. How do you kind of make sure that those things are followed up? I mean, I'm assuming that this is all kind of tracking through your team for you guys. Are you the one that's generally dealing once all the money's kind of come in, they're sending it to you and then you're dealing with it? Or how are you kind of working behind the scenes?
Yeah, we'll make sure that we get letters. I have personal cards with Sophia's picture on it. And we make sure that we get those out to, any vendors or anybody we maybe saw at the bartending event that said, hey, I've had a lot of people come up to me during that event and say, hey, we'll definitely get involved, just let us know next time you need us or, So even just sending out a little thank you to them after the bartending event or for great strides, vendors, clients, people that we meet. And just trying to keep that communication. Something else we do, we took Johnny Jr. out to just to keep that connection and took them out to dinner and just thought that was just we don't get to see them very much because everybody's so busy, so it was just kind of nice to be able to carve that time out for this this family that helps us so much. So awesome. So the last question, I will start with you guys again. Either what is the one thing that you have done or see that you could do to really take your event to that next level?
Well, that's a good question. I think probably the important part, so, we're talking, Andy talks kind of about big dollars. In my position, I don't have a lot of CEO to CEO FaceTime other than, going there to talk to them, but that would kind of be cold calls. I think, a good step is, based on the support that we get from our CEO and president, is to be able to use him to kind of make those connections. He has those connections that, he can open the door for those talks, so it's not as much of a cold ask. It's like, there's already a relationship. So, yeah, and like Marianne says, he's willing to do it. He's willing to help. So,
awesome. Starting in-house. Randy, what would be the one thing that you think really took things to the next step or you're planning to do?
Well, we've seen tremendous growth at our event. We'll go over $1 million this year that we've raised, and we're excited about that. For us, I try to make as much as I can, as big a deal as I can about the sponsors. So we started a VIP event, which is the night before the golf tournament. And it is a dinner. It is where we do most of our charitable announcements, what's going on with the foundation. It's where we do our silent auction. We've really grown that to really kind of be the next level. I mean, the golf tournament will raise so much money on the day of. Between all the sponsors that pay to play and the money that you can do there, you kind of get a little bit capped with what we can do. So we tied in, some people call it a gala, I call it a VIP. And the VIP is just free tickets to my sponsors and their team that are playing that come in to get a free dinner, they get some free drinks, and we talk about the cause. And that's where we do our bid for the cure. That's where we do those type of things that generate a lot more money for us. Growing that event is probably the biggest avenue for us to continue to grow the Sunday night piece of it. The golf course will get kind of maxed out at some point. But I would say that for us, we've got to do more to bring in a reason still. I mean, we've been doing the Sunday night event for, 10 years probably. And I think I could easily double the attendance and what I make that night still by bringing the appeal to that event. We've brought Branch and Dean in now. They've traveled on their dime to come down and play for us. They come stay at the house. They'll do whatever they can for us. So looking for ways to grow the Sunday night event is really kind of tied to the golf tournament. The thing that really does for me, though, that separates me from other golf tournaments because it's value, right? So now that same entry fee that guy pays gets him be able to take his wife to dinner at a upscale event the night before, or they can bring customers, or they can bring vendors. All they got to do is ask for tickets, and that gets a little bit more value for my event than the next guy.
Awesome. So Andy, I'm going to tweak it just a little bit. You've been doing this the longest. What would you say was maybe your defining moment in your event that you see as really took it to that next level?
The defining moment, I would say, and let me add this. I always say with the word I look at I as the 9th letter of the alphabet. You know, it really has nothing to do with fundraising because you need a we, and I have a lot of people that help out, and so I just want to make sure people understand that when I say I'm going to say we, because there are a lot more people than just me. Otherwise, this event would fail miserably. But I'll say we. The event for us, the one thing that really made a difference was we came up with something called an ambassador program. And what that was is, so there are 16 softball teams, and a lot of those teams are corporations, or at least half. And what we would say is, you know, every year they raised they did sponsorships, or, you know, they came out and raised a little bit of money, which was great and all. But I kept thinking there's got to be a way that we could raise more money. And we talked about it, we thought through it. And I happened to be watching TV one day, and I saw something that was like for Jerry's kids. And it showed these kids on there and their stories, and I was just like, I want to give, and I don't really even know a lot. You know, it's March of Dimes. I didn't know a lot about it. I'm like, that makes me want to give. And I was like, wait a minute. You know, there are a lot of kids out there with cystic fibrosis, and I have yet to involve them. Most of these people knew when they thought of CF was me. And so they thought the main symptom was a bad sense of humor. And obviously they were correct, but obviously they didn't know a lot about anybody else. They just knew one person, really. And there were some that knew a few others, but really it was just, when there are 30,000 people in this country with this disease, you don't know many of them. So I thought there are a lot of people in Georgia living with this disease. I reached out to the Georgia chapter and said, do you mind asking some of the kids, the parents, if their kids would like to, if we could use their picture, maybe tell their story, or even have a video of their story, and match them up with the team. And I thought maybe going in, maybe half of them will do it. I will say probably about 95% of the parents agreed to do it. In that first year, we went from maybe raising $4,000 or $5,000 in sponsorship or in team fundraising to about $25,000. So and that's in 1 year. And we've been doing that the last 4 or 5 years. And sometimes we'll even put all the kids' pictures on the program for the event. Because that's what it's about. This is going to sound a little strange, but it's not about me. I know I have cystic fibrosis and all, but it's about the next generation. It's about curing them. Granted, I hope I get cured one day, but my goal is for kids not to have to deal with some of the things I've had to deal with as I've gotten older. I don't want them to have to deal with cystic fibrosis anymore. I want them to tell, and I know we have some people that work at the CF Foundation, like Peter and Dana, that are here today. Unfortunately, I wanted to have them say, it's time to get a new job because we don't need you anymore. We cured this disease. So that's the goal right there. Is we got kids involved. The kids made a huge difference, more than I ever could. And I'm really proud of each of them for sharing their stories and being brave that way, and not being afraid to let their guard down and tell everybody about themselves. So that's what we did.
Awesome. Well, now is going to be the time that we turn it over to all of you, both online and here in the room. What questions do you have for the panel, or even what best practices do you have that you can share with everyone else that maybe someone could take away from some successes or some frustrations that you've run into? So there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could either do it here, right here in the room, just stand up and we can kind of go about that. There's also the online social Q&A that as those roll through, we can bring them up here and I can pose those to to the panel as well. But is there anyone in the room to start off that has anything they'd like to start? Yes, sir. So the question was for Randy. He was asking how he procures the actual golf course, asking do they donate the course and the time, or do they actually have to pay for that and rent it out?
That's the only thing we pay for. We do, and it really depends upon how you want to do it. We do it at a local country club. So for me, I want the venue to be kind of part of the attraction. So I did go negotiate a contract with them, and I actually renegotiate that contract every year, where we pay reduced green fees and cart fees, but that's all that I pay for there. And then they in turn do some donating back as well. But again, I've had a 13-year relationship with those guys now. But if there are courses in town that will do it for free, but you kind of get what you pay for, and that I've gradually kind of tried to scale the tournament up a little bit, make it a little bit more appealing. That is our single largest expense.
And I'm actually going to pose that question to Nate and Marianne as well, as far as for your event, and then Andy, I'll ask you that same thing as well.
Well, again, for the get-together for our cause, which is the bartender event, the local establishment, McFadden's, they donate the space, and Mascaro picks up the tab for the whole evening. So it's pretty much a zero-cost event as far as, based on the donations that we get.
And that's based off of a relationship that they had.
And that is, yes. Yeah, the CF Foundation of the Western Chapter has a really good relationship with McFadden's. There was the 65 Roses Sports Auction started at the same establishment, so there's a history there.
Awesome. And Andy, I know obviously this is going to take a big diamond. How do you go about? Is that something that you find just a local park and rent it, or how do you go about that?
Well, we definitely have to pay for it, and I will agree with something that Randy just said. Is you get what you pay for. We could probably get a park for free, but it wouldn't be very pretty, and it would probably cause a lot of these teams not to want to participate the next year, because when you get these softball players out there, I mean, while they do it for charity, they're competitors, they're athletes, they're there to win the tournament. So, you put them on a field where there are rocks everywhere on the ground and there's no fence and all this kind of stuff, and they're not going to want to come back next year. So we try to do it up, we try to make it nice, and that is the one thing we do pay for. But I will say, when we do an event, it usually turns out to be 96-4, which means 96% goes to the charity and 4% goes to administrative costs.
Awesome. I know we've got another question here in the room.
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm a mother. I've got 2 kids with CF, and I think this question could be posed to Marianne also, but just across the board. I think we do homeschool our kids too, so the time and the ability to get out there and put our face in front of a lot of these companies is very, very difficult when you have so many other responsibilities going on at home. But I think we all know getting out there and putting your face in front of these companies and putting a face to the stories is the best possible way to get these corporations engaged. But do y'all have any other best practices as far as like, okay, if I can't get myself and make an appointment with that person or that director, does anything else work for y'all? Do emails, the phone calls, letters? Is there something else that also feels like is just as good? And if we can't get to that point of being in front of somebody, if y'all have any advice for that?
Actually, so one of the things that I do, this is kind of a year-round thing for me. When I go to the doctor's appointment, which, we're always going to doctor's appointments, or I'll engage their pediatrician right away, and I'll make sure I have a letter with me or, some kind of documentation on what's going on. So I find being able to in our daily activities, maybe the dentist that I go to or anybody I'm involved with. Maybe we go to a store, quite often, and I'll take something with me for that. So I just try to find where we go, what kind of activities we do. Maybe there's a friend that, has, that owns a business, and once we're there, we'll be chatting about CF. So I think just finding those opportunities with different business owners or, different people is helpful.
Awesome. I am going to go. Randy, you have something to add? Go right ahead.
Just to add to that, one of the things that I did, because I understand that, and my time has gotten less and less over the last few years available because of work. So we created a video that really highlights what we do, why we do it, who's involved, who the sponsors are. It's about 3 to 4 minutes long. And now I can, over the phone, say, hey, can I send you this video? And it's actually out on YouTube, so now I can just send them a link. Say, hey, here's a link. It takes you 4 minutes to understand exactly what we're talking about. If you're interested, email me back. And then, so it's just a way for me to do it without ever leaving my office.
Awesome. So I'm going to go to a question online that's actually for everyone here on the panel. They really love the idea of Andy's leave behind for his book, but they wanted to know, for you guys, do you guys have any leave behinds, and if so, what are they, and how do you create them?
Well, the first thing is the video. I try to leave that with them as well. So put it on a jump drive and just kind of show them the actual event. It's got good video of the night before. It's got video of the golf course and the golf tournament itself. So a leave behind for me is the sponsorship agreement. Getting an idea of exactly kind of where they're at. Like Andy said, it's really important to kind of go in with a plan. But a leave behind for me is going to be having the agreement in their hand with an idea of kind of where you want them, and then that last piece of information about what the cause is doing and what the event looks like.
Nate, Marianne, anything to add to that?
I mean, I think our biggest leave behind, like Marianne said, she touched on it earlier, is we made personal thank you cards that actually have the picture of our daughter on her. So there's kind of that connection, when we thank everybody that they know what they were involved with.
Awesome. I know we've got another question in the room there.
Yes, thank you for your inspirations to know that everyday people can make a very big difference. So first, a word of thanks. We live in a community of about 21,000 in our town. We have a Great Strides event, and we're just looking to get more and more corporate involvement. Any thoughts about the CF Foundation becoming part of the local Chamber of Commerce and using the Chamber of Commerce as a communication tool and participating at after-hours events? Any experience or thoughts along those lines?
Does anyone in the room have any experience with that they'd like to add, or anyone on the panel? Or I think right here. Oh, he wants to ask a question later. All right. Does anyone in the room have a response to? Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I am with one of the chapters, but we are allowed to participate in those events, so we can do that and be a part of the chamber. So working with your chapter to either make sure that they are involved with the chamber or just kind of bring it up with the chapter that's near you.
Awesome. And so you could maybe take some time to, if you have some more questions you'd like to ask her on how they went about that, I think you'd probably really appreciate that.
Okay, what are in your sponsorship package, what's your low-end sponsorship, the high-end, what do you offer your sponsors in return for those sponsorship levels, and maybe something that's unique or different in how you do that to try and engage them? And some events are, and if you made a jump at some point, because your events are 14 and 18 years old and 8, 10, when did you make that jump, and was it, why did you make it, or how did you get there?
Let's start with Andy on that one.
Okay, so as far as what our sponsorships are now, like our biggest and our smallest, back then and now, is that what we're is that the question?
Yep, and what do you offer for that sponsorship?
Oh,
so
sure.
They get any perks for being it?
So when we first started, it was probably about $2,500 was our biggest sponsorship, and $100 was our smallest sponsorship. And for the biggest sponsorship, you got your logo on our T-shirt, you got a logo on our banner, and that was pretty much it. We tried to put we allowed, if they want to bring a sign out to the field and put it up there, we would put their name somewhere. And, it was at that point, when we first started out in 2000, there wasn't a lot of social media, or at least I wasn't very good at social media. So we didn't put a lot out there. But nowadays, so in 2018, our biggest sponsorship is about $15,000. And our smallest sponsorship is, I think it's about $350. And now with the greatest one, you're on the T-shirt, You're on a banner at the field. You get to put your signs at the field. We name a field after you. We put all your logo on the website. We also let you put a logo on the in our program. So there's a lot more to it now, and you get a lot more involvement basically in the event. And you can also get your name on the event. If you're a premier sponsor, we would say, for example, Wish for Wendy presented by the Miller Foundation. So, we kind of use that to really make it our event, not just our event, but our event and the premier sponsors event. That's kind of what we do, and that's how we've changed it over the years.
Awesome. Anything from the panel here to add?
All those are great things, and we do most all of those too, I think. Our lowest level is $100. Our highest level is $10,000. One of the things that we do on the Sunday night event is we do allow the sponsor of that night, so have somebody that sponsors that night, as well as our highest level, have the opportunity to speak at the event and talk about why they're involved. And that's pretty powerful as well for that sponsor to be able to be in front of, in my case, most of it is their peers or even competitors, and talk about their own company and what their company gets out of it.
Awesome. Anything to add, Aaron?
The way our event's set up structured, it's a little different than that, but I hate to jump backwards. But one thing real quick, he talked about the little smaller community.
Yeah.
In our town, a friend of ours that we got involved, he's part of the Rotary Club in our town, and it was a really good network to get local businesses involved into our cause, so it worked out well. I know that might help you in that smaller situation.
Okay, cool. I think we've got time for about 2 more questions. We're going to go to in the room, and then we'll do one more that's left online.
Hi, I just wanted to talk again about leave behind packets when you're visiting sponsors. I participated in Advocacy Day yesterday, and one of the areas I covered in our meetings was FDA and NIH funding. I pulled out the drug pipeline that was in our folder, and that was so impactful. I was able to take the entire purple section of the drug pipeline and cover it with my hand and say, when my son was diagnosed, this entire section was non-existent. And that really made an impact with legislators. So I thought, why have I never thought to use these tools when I'm talking with sponsors? So I plan to revamp our sponsorship packages and include these pieces of literature that the foundation has created, and they're available to help you. The communications department with the foundation can help send you anything electronically or even a hard copy that you'd want to include.
Hey, Drew, can I answer that one?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, that was something I was going to mention, is that we as a committee, our corporate committee here has come up with the brochure that we've been working on, and it's going to provide kind of the story of the CF Foundation and why it's so important, why it's so great to give to our organization. And we're still, I'm sure, we're going to come up with changes here and there as we go, but it's a good start. And so I'm glad she brought that up. That is a key point, is we need to give information. And for example, when we, right before our big charity event every year, when we form our committee, the first thing we do is we give everybody a folder that we've created, and it has the first thing that they open up is the drug pipeline. So I think it's so important to know that the momentum that is carrying here, that how much momentum we have, and then the next thing we do is just tell them why we started Wish for Wendy. But the first thing we do, make sure, is know that they're not just getting into something that it's just over and over the same thing every year. This is big time.
Awesome. So we've got 5 minutes left, and we still need to do a wrap up. I will ask this question real quick to each of you. Give us the 30,000-foot answer real quick. I'm going to start with Nate and Marianne here. How, if at all, has your local chapter factored into your corporate outreach and meetings? How, if at all, has your local chapter factored into your corporate outreach and the meetings you've had?
Oh, our local chapters, they're rock stars, so we lean on them for everything. Can you, if we want to go make an ask, hey, can somebody come with us? Hey, Mascara wants to do this or get involved in this. Can you kind of show them how? We really, really lean on the local chapters, and I think probably across the country, they're all as much a rock star as ours is in Western Pennsylvania. So my advice would be, definitely use your chapters.
Awesome. Randy.
Yeah, very easy. I have the best chapter in the world. So the Heart of America chapter has the greatest staff out there. So absolutely utilize them. They're as passionate about it as you are. So I would definitely say that you can't go wrong by bringing them along with you. There's inevitably questions they can answer better than you. So
Awesome. Andy, I will let you answer this question and then close it up for us.
All right, sure. Absolutely. When we started, we were a small community event, and I didn't know a lot about the CF Foundation, but they truly, over the years, we started a little slow. We kind of tried to do it ourselves, but over time, we asked for more help and more help and more help, and they have really done an amazing job. In fact, it used to be that I would get the truck, go to the event, bring all the stuff, and then pick up all the stuff and take it back. And now it's to this point where the foundation themselves gets a driver. They take all the stuff. They even carry it for me, bring it there, bring it back. I do very little, which is very nice. And but I want to thank my foundation, the Georgia chapter, and especially point out Linda Murphy and Scott Rittenbaum, who've always done a great job for us.
Awesome.
I'll go. That must be the Georgia chapter there. I heard those 3 claps. But I'm going to go ahead and close it out here and just say, about the road to yes. And I guess what our key takeaways are today: be confident. Be confident. You can make an ask. Don't be afraid to hear the word no. It's not worth it. It's not worth. It's not a worry. If they say no, they say no. But you know what? We're looking for a yes. Go for the yes. No cold calls. Activate your network. I mentioned LinkedIn. A lot of people mention their work associates, friends, contacts, anybody you may know. It does work. We have some great people out there, some very caring, generous people who are willing to help us. But I definitely agree that cold calling is not an effective way to do it. In fact, one time on LinkedIn, I actually tried that. Anybody who had a connection to the CF Foundation that didn't already do an event, I sent a note. I didn't get one response. So that told me right there, you really do have to have a connection. And the chapters are here to support you. They truly are. They give it their best, and they have some great people working for them that are there for the cause, and we really need to take advantage of them. And I'm very appreciative. I did want to add one final thing that it kind of made me laugh. I was looking at everybody over there, and I saw there's a water over there. I see. I think there's a cup of coffee, all this kind of stuff. And then I look at my desk. I've got a nebulizer. And a nebulizer machine, and I'm just like, well, there we go. I really want to stop holding on to these things. So if we could just cure this disease pretty quickly, you guys won't have to hear my humor anymore.
Awesome.
So thank you guys.
Awesome. Are there any other final comments from the group here?
I'd like one thing I've been wanting to mention. This is about getting to a yes. For me, if you're going to go in front of a corporation, treat it like an interview. If you're going to interview with a company, you're going to go online, you're going to look them up, you're going to know what they do, you're going to know where they give their money. All that stuff's available on their website. The more educated you are about them, the more interested they're going to be about you.
Awesome. If there are any other questions or thoughts that anyone had that we didn't get to, please feel free to reach out to the panel. Obviously, you can get our information through the foundation. We'll find a way to get that out there to everybody. But thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate your time.